it's Dr. Manali Desai. Today I'm going to be talking about the general principles of switching out extra carbs and sugars for healthier options when you're eating at home. The reason it's important is because studies show 50% of Americans eat more sugar and processed carbs than is healthy for them, and that can lead to developing diabetes, which can also lead to developing heart disease. And so that's why it's important to think about before you develop diabetes, or hopefully even pre-diabetes. The best way to find out kind of where you are is to get your fasting blood glucose or hemoglobin A1C checked. If you're getting your hemoglobin A1C checked, generally the goal is to be less than 5.7%. Once you hit 5.7%, that's pre-diabetes, and after that, when it gets higher, it's diabetes. And so that's the place to start to see kind of where you're at and see, how much of a need you have for cutting back on processed carbs and unhealthy sugars. So basically how your blood sugar works is that, when you start eating, your blood sugar will rise. And if you don't have diabetes or pre-diabetes, it generally will return to normal after 2 hours. And if the more carbs and sugars you eat, the higher it will raise. And so then when it drops, it'll be an even steeper drop. And then you can feel tired and kind of like you have low energy, and then you may end up eating more to keep your energy levels back up. And so it's, the more, if you eat healthier carbs, it doesn't raise quite as much, but it will still rise. And then if you eat unhealthy carbs, it'll rise even more. And if you're eating sugars, processed sugars like candy and pastries and things like that, it'll rise even higher. And so generally speaking, the first meal you want to look at is breakfast, because that's what sets your blood sugar for the day. And for most people, that's going to be the easiest place to cut back or switch out for healthier options. And for vegetarians, it usually makes sense, if vegetarians and vegans, to switch out extra carbs or carbs for more proteins like nuts and things like that. And for people who are eating meat, usually it makes sense to switch out carbs for things like fruit, because that's healthier sugar in relation to your blood sugar, or things like with healthy fats like avocado. That's the easiest change to make. But breakfast tends to be the meal that you should change first, because it is setting your blood sugar for the rest of the day. Now, some people find that hard and find it easier to do actually intermittent fasting, so that you don't eat later in the day. So it's worth trying, either option to see what works best, or both options to see what works best for you. And then the next place to look is, if you're not eating breakfast, or you already eat a really healthy breakfast, is to look at your lunch, dinner. Unfortunately, our food culture a lot of times tends towards double carbs, and for a lot of people that can be too much carbs. And so if you think about it, it's like bread and pasta, or eating roti and rice, or naan and rice, and chips and salsa and tacos. And I know a lot of people think like, oh, we've been eating like this for hundreds of years, but people used to live much shorter lives. So now, because of, advancements in medicine, you can, live a much longer life, even if you have a heart attack at your 50, versus, like 100 years ago, if you had a heart attack at 50, you would die. So that's why it's important to think about that, even though maybe people used to eat like this, they used to also die at a much younger age. Now people are going to live longer, and when you live longer, you want to be in good health. It makes a big difference if you have your first heart attack at 50 versus if you have it at 80 in the quality of your life. And so that's why it's important to sort of think about these things now. So as far as switching out, double carbs, again, for vegans and vegetarians, it usually makes sense to switch out for a healthy protein. And then for people who are meat eaters, it usually makes sense to switch out for a non-starchy vegetable. Usually roasted vegetables or salads are the easiest place to switch. And so that's where to make that change. And it's not to have any carbs at all, but cutting back can help a lot when you're or switching out for healthier options that are not carbs can help with lowering your blood sugar. So I would recommend changing one meal at a time, and usually it's to start with the first meal of the day that you're having, because it can be, even though we get excited and want to make a lot of health changes and change all our meals, a lot of these foods were, carbs and sugary foods were designed to be addictive by the food industry, so it can be hard to change everything at once. And if you're going to make these changes, we want to make them for your long-term health, ideally for the rest of your life. And so making changes that you can actually keep long-term is important. So I'd recommend changing one meal first and switching out carbs for other non-carb healthy options, and try that for 4 weeks and see how it goes. And if it goes well, add an additional meal where you can make these changes and see how that goes. Usually if you're using your hemoglobin A1C to monitor, it takes about 3 months to see a significant change based on how you're eating. And so you could even have it checked again with your doctor to see how it's going. That's all for today. For more videos like this one and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.